Okay, so facing the void sounds very scary, and it is. So in this video, I'm going to speak about how do we face the void? What is the void? What is truth? What is the root of addictions, of kind of suffering and this discontent that we feel when we're alone in silence? What's all this about? So recently I've been doing the good old-fashioned suffering. And from my suffering, I've been gaining insights and really meditating on it. And recently, I made a video about this concept of unmet needs and addiction and how we need to stop focusing on the objects of addiction. So if you're addicted to scrolling on YouTube, for example, not to focus on your phone or YouTube as the source of the source of concern, not to try to optimize the objects, but rather dive deeper into the fundamental unmet needs that you have that cause these behaviors to manifest. So you could be lonely, you could be feeling powerless, so you engage in scrolling or watching movies with certain characters and doing certain things. And I realized that unmet needs are also a symptom to a more fundamental thing, which is the inability to sit in silence and to embrace the emptiness of your nature. And so what does that mean? So the emptiness of your nature essentially means the impermanence or the lack of a stable, static self behind your eyes or in your heart or wherever you might identify with this separate self. And emptiness and facing emptiness means to let go of this separation that you're clinging onto and to let it be and to embrace it fully, to embrace your inherent nature rather than to constantly keep creating these barriers and these fears to keep yourself separate and small. And if you've been in the spiritual circle for any amount of time, or if you've meditated quite extensively, you'll understand this discomfort or fear that you feel in silence, and how your ego, especially if you've taken psychedelics, you'll notice this more than likely, how your ego will fight for survival in your mind, and it will kind of act like a cornered wild animal when you're sitting in silence or trying to pay attention to the present moment. And this fear and this inability to pay attention to the present moment, to pay attention to the lack of a separate self, is what causes all of this addiction, all of this suffering, all of this fear. When we identify with our mind and our body, when we're operating from this paradigm, everything can attack you, everything can harm you, everything is other than you. So when you think everything outside is not what's inside, there's just going to be this duality that causes suffering and that causes fear, that causes anxiety. You're going to basically constantly try to avoid this throughout your life, one way or another, until you address this fundamentally at the root. Addictions will just continue happening, and various symptoms, unmet needs will continue to manifest in your life unless you address at a root level why these things are happening. And that root level is that silence, is that emptiness, is that impermanence that you have to come to terms with in silence, in solitude, in your day-to-day experiences. And that can only be done by elevating your awareness, by paying attention to your suffering, by pushing through your discomfort. But to get more practical, we can't just do this in one big fell swoop. We're just like, I'm going to face all of this truth, all of this emptiness. We really do have to take baby steps. And this is something that I've kind of been humbled towards in my day-to-day life, where I thought, okay, once I realized this, I thought, okay, I'm just going to face all the truth in one day. Or I'm going to just meditate 5 hours today, or do something crazy like that. And naturally, that was another way that my ego was keeping me separate, keeping me fearful, keeping me basically contracted, setting unrealistic expectations and setting myself up to fail so that I did not have to face the truth in the end. And this is something, if you pay attention, you do all the time. You're keeping yourself stuck in subtle, sophisticated ways that you might not appreciate at first glance. And so, yeah, I would set these unrealistic expectations, but that is not the play. It's to step by step face these like small baby doses of truth and to slowly build yourself up to expanding your love, expanding your truth, and accepting every single part of your being, unifying your mind, purifying your mind in a sense. And this can't be done in one go. Just slowly and steadily tolerate more and more silence, tolerate more and more, tolerate's the wrong word, but break through and love through more and more silence, more and more painful things, more and more suffering. And as you kind of lean into that emptiness, lean into realizing that you don't know what's going on with your sense of self, that you aren't what you think you are fundamentally, the more and more you do this, the more and more you will have a tolerance. Again, tolerance isn't the right word, but more and more of a capacity to act out of love, act out of truth. And this will lead to just so much more peace, so much more suffering. I've noticed a lot in my life as well. The times where I've directly confronted the truth, embraced the truth, the suffering just decreases so much. Like, it just basically disappears. Your willingness to face the truth and to embrace it is basically in correlation with how much suffering you will go through. So the more truth you face, the less suffering you will experience. Pain will still be there, but suffering is a completely different beast. Suffering is self-inflicted. It's an interpretation of bodily sensations and pain. Like a personal kind of interpretation where you're like, oh, why is this happening to me? It's like a rejection of it happening to your ego. But again, it's not really happening to your ego. And the more and more you meditate, the more and more glimpses you will have of this. And again, I'm really new to this idea. I feel like I have a conceptual understanding, but the conceptual understanding is so limited. And it's just a pointer to the experiential understanding of actually being able to break through that suffering. So yeah, this video is basically a big pointer to basically stop thinking about these objects, these symptoms, like even your unmet needs, or just reorganizing your environment so you're a little bit happier. All of these things are, they probably have their time and place, but fundamentally, if you're looking for peace of mind and happiness, you can only find that right now by paying attention to the present moment and directly confronting the truth. You're not going to be able to adjust your way around this confrontation. Like, you're not going to be able to trick yourself to not facing yourself. It's not going to happen elsewhere. It's not going to happen if you get that job. It's not going to happen if you make that money or you date that person. These are all just, you're basically just covering it all up, but it's going to pop out in other places and it's going to manifest in different ways. And the manifestations will get more and more sophisticated as you cover it up more and more. But you have to, at a base level, if you want to address this part of yourself, this unfulfilled, this separate, this longing desire, and this desire to escape, to express, to suppress, to repress, if you want to deal with that at a root level, you have to sit in silence. You have to pay attention to your experience right now and to embrace it. And yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about in this video. Hopefully this insight helped you. And yeah, hopefully you have a great day. Peace and love.